So you like the 4-2-1-3, but you want something better and more controlling in the midfield. And I think the 4-3-3 holding is actually a very good formation. If you like the 4-2-1-3, it's almost identical. Just have a look at it from a base principle point of view, right? You can see you still retain one CDM, so you're still defensively sound. You're not going into full center mid territory. But instead of one singular cam, you have two center mids. Now, I'll tell you something as well. I was just doing a bit of testing, and I was saying, if, for example, hypothetically speaking, you did something like this, two playmakers, you would argue that this would be the best appropriate mix between being attacking in a 4-2-3-1 with two center mids here being the key thing, as opposed to using a 4-2-1-3. So that is the real benefit you do have. So although the 4-2-1-3, as I said to you, it's one of the best formations. We know that. I'm not going to sit here and lie, but a lot of you guys find it too defensive. And I think you're probably quite right. Even I don't like this formation. I don't like using it for the entire game. I might use it to start the game with, but I'd much prefer a formation that's got cams or maybe a 4-4-2. So this is why this formation is actually very interesting. And again, with the 4-3-3 flat, you have no CDM. So we're going to go with the 4-3-3 holding. We're going to walk you through. I'm going to show you how I changed the tactics as well compared to the 4-2-3-1. So the striker, for a singular striker, I would normally typically go for advanced forward. You can use a poacher if you're spamming through balls in behind. If you're doing first time through balls, I would actually recommend a poacher. But because it's a singular striker, and as you can see, there's no one with this player in support, I'd put advanced forward, because sometimes you need to ping the ball to them, let them hold up the ball a little bit. Now for the left wing and right wing, basically identical to the 4-2-1-3. Now what's also important here is when you have left wings and right wings, they're a bit more attacking than a traditional left mid and right mid that kind of help you a bit more on the defensive end. So the benefit you do have of these players is it's gonna replicate the 4. So from the attacking standpoint, you're basically copying your existing 4-2-1-3 tactics that you already have. Now with your CDM, I would for me personally, on a singular CDM, I prefer holding. I understand the logic of deep line playmaker, because in theory, when you have the ball, that player sits deeper, so in actual fact, it makes him more defensive. But personally speaking, I always like this player to be holding, because they're in the middle. You can always use deep line playmaker ones, but I like them because they're in between the center mids and the center backs, and they're not too close to the center back. So it's kind of like a anti-pressing point as well. I like to look at it. Then you have the two center mids. Now, this is where things get interesting. So I just got Wanyeri here for an example. You can't play a player out of position. I think for center mids, to get that good appropriate balance, you need two players here that's in position. Ideally, two players that can do a bit of everything, that are a bit more attack heavy. If you have that Zidane card would be thrown in this position. That would be a perfect example of someone that can do a bit of everything. Now, the two options you do have is,
you want to get better at FC25. Now, before you skip ahead, what if I told you if you don't get better after 1 month, I'll refund your money? That's the nil guys guarantee. We got in-depth tutorials that are not even on the YouTube channel. We show you the theory of something, and we show you gameplay examples in a structured format. We also go over real-life football examples that apply to the game, and exclusive pro gameplay analysis, full gameplay analysis to elevate your game. We teach you everything from the basics to the meta. Come join at patreon.com/nilguys. Links down below in the description. If you don't get better after 1 month, we'll refund your money. That's the nil guys guarantee. Links down below in the description.
Is getting a more of a combination type player, a bit of everything, or you can go with these individual players. Now, as you can see, I've got Havertz. Now, this Havertz card, don't sleep on this card. He's got 98 sprint speed, very, very attacking, but he can't defend to save his life. So I would probably say both of these players on box to box, in my opinion, for slow players. If you like to build up the gameplay and you like to be a bit more slow with your movement, a bit more methodical, and you like to play that waiting game, and you like to wait for your midfielders to join into the attack later on, I would go with two box to boxes. You still have that CDM there for stability and holding the midfield. They're going to protect your back four and also can distribute the ball, but you have that balance. They're going to come back and they're going to come forward. I'd recommend ideally a plus here. Otherwise, I'd recommend a playmaker. That way you got a bit of a combination. So if you really love the 4-2-1-3, you kind of want that cam type player. So think of this center mid as that cam type player and then having a box to box alongside him. So the benefit of this is you try to replicate the 4-2-1-3 in attack as much as possible, but then you have a player also that comes in from midfield that kind of comes and helps the attack. So think of this almost like an attacking 4-2-1-3. Yes, I know this player is not completely central. I'm completely aware of that. But that is something you can actually look about this. You can even, if you honestly really wanted to, you could probably even go with like a roaming or something like that. but that's something that I just will not recommend. Now, one thing you could do is, I'll show you something a bit crazy, right? If you did, for example, box to box, and then you put, for example, a deep line playmaker, you can also make it defensive on a fly. So, of course, if you wanted to commit, let's say, a player on this side as a wing back, you kind of have that stability of having that player as a deep line playmaker wide, or you could even move this player. So you can see there's so many different variations that you could do. You could do this as wide half defend. And basically, if you put Patterson, for example, as attacking wing back, you have that covering potential as well. So you could actually convert this into a 4-4-2 in possession. So this is why this formation is actually kind of interesting, because you do have a lot of ability. Now, what I would personally do is I would personally go with both fullbacks. I'll leave them on both of them on balance, okay? I'll leave the CDM, as I mentioned, on holding. And I would say box to box probably would be the best combination for everyone. And if you like to be very, very attacking, you can put one of them on playmaker attack. Or if you absolutely want to, you can put them both on playmaker attack. Now, that's going to make it more attacking than a 4-2-1-3. Yes, you won't have that cam there that you would typically have in a 4-2-1-3 for the counter attack, but it makes it more attacking. So that's what I'd recommend. For both the center backs, defender plus plus is what you ideally want. Defender defend is what you want. Don't do anything like ball playing center back. Yes, in theory, you're making it more attacking, but at the cost of defense is too high. So I'd much rather you keep one CDM and then have two attackers at the mid. So this is kind of the halfway point. You're not going to a 4-4-2 territory. You're not going to like a 4-4-3-3 attack. And also you're still retaining that CDM. So you have that stability and two attacking players. Again, depending on what you want to do. Look, I'll be honest, you could technically, if you really, really wanted to, you could actually go over here to playmaker and put them both on roaming. You could actually do this. There's nothing stopping you. Although I'll be honest, I don't really like the movement, because when everyone thinks of roaming, they're just thinking of a player is going to pop in at the right place at the right time. But of course, in a video game, that doesn't happen. Even with the high attacking intelligence and very good attack positioning, they basically sometimes they come deep too much. That's why I wouldn't recommend it. I feel like they come deep. I want them to stay there, and that's why I think box to box is probably the best combination for everyone. So that's the way we're going to release this, but you can always adjust this to playmaker as you want to. Both the left back and right back on balance are providing support and that link up play and creating those butterfly wings on either side. Very, very important now. So what about that tactics itself? So the way I would say is, for the build-up style, I would personally still go with counter. Even if you're playing slow, I would still go with counter, because it's what makes these players move, especially when you have possession of the ball, is what makes them move forward. So without it being on counter, they're a bit static. You kind of want them to move. I'd rather you have them move than do nothing at all. That's the way that I look at it. But you want more AI movement as opposed to less. So I would say I will leave it on counter. But of course, if you do really like to use balanced, you could do so. Now, the defense approach, now this is where things get tricky. Now, typically I can offer you a statement and say, you know what, use something like 45 if you're not too sure. But the thing is, with one CDM, I think it's actually a good pressing system. Yes, it's not good as a 4-4-2, but I think honestly, a lot of people here can get away with high. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't have two CDMs, you got one CDM. But I think the way the meta is shifting now, I think with AI defense the way it is, even after this patch, I think realistically speaking, people are using a lot more of the left backs and right backs to go forward, because people are playing a bit more of the over defensive counter attack on a 4-2-1-3. So I think with a higher depth, when you lose the ball, you also higher up the pitch to win the ball, and AI actually helps you quite a lot. You know, when I was actually recording my Division 10 to Elite Division series, and of course you can watch that on my Patreon series, I actually use 70 depth for most of the series, because even if you're an average player, as long as you know how to basically defend, 70 depth actually helps you a lot more than 45. Again, this will depend on your skill level, but I think for the average player, I think a higher depth, as long as you know how to defend, that's the most important thing, it can make a big difference. So if you are looking for something that's more attacking than a 4-2-1-3 and you want to add a new formation and try a new formation before the weekend league, this could be a very good formation to try. Or at least just using your combination. You know, if you are playing a 4-2-1-3, you just need one of the players that can play both. So let's say Zidane can play cam and centre mid. We know that. You just need a player here, realistically, one of the CDMs that can play centre mid as well. And you're basically good to go. And for any of you wondering what the Zidane stats were, that's the Zidane stats. Yes, the guy can't defend to save his life, but absolute of a beast running forward and picking the ball up in midfield and being that target player. Kind of what he does in real life. Does a bit of everything, picks up in those spaces. and helps in the final third. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take it easy, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out. Don't forget, if you want to get better FC coverage on my Patreon, so it's patreon.com/no guys. Links down below in the description.